It was the fourth jumper this standard, an accountant well liked in the office, who had hurled himself from the 30th floor. The gravity nets near the base of the tower had stopped his fall, of course, though the ground floor security had immediately detained the unfortunate accountant. Officers with law enforcement stamps on their shells had trundled through the office that day, shaking their eye stalks in exasperation. "One of these days someone is going to slip through the nets if administration doesn't up their strength," an officer had exclaimed near the entrance just this morning. Hunak could do nothing but exhale through his mandibles and shake his eye stalks in agreement. It had only been 5 days since the first run on the banks, but the human situation already occupied all of Hunak's professional attention. He entered his office from the lift and tapped a floor panel with a claw in his forefoot, twice in quick repetition. The wall across from him became a vid screen. It was playing a news report on the economy and good governance channel. Despite the protests of the Minister of the Economy, the markets have spoken. Galactic credit ratings are falling like stones, while the value of the human currency continues to rise. Economists are stumped, and with reports like the one submitted by the opposition party to the central bank this morning, the government may have no choice but to... Hunak tapped the floor again, and the vidscreen closed abruptly. He sighed and hesitated before risking a look at his portfolio. He closed it just as quickly as the news vid. He did not bother opening the account for his retirement fund. Just as soon as these humans had appeared on the galactic stage, they had been eager to open their markets. And as soon as they had, the galactic market had reeled so sharply that the reverberations were still shaking the economy to its foundations. Hunak wished he could speak with one of those damned old bipeds at the human central bank and get a clearer first-hand picture of what exactly was wrong with their markets. It was the most researched topic in the galaxy currently, but despite that, nobody seemed to have the faintest idea how the human economy actually worked. Hunak jumped a few channels to foreign affairs and was stunned to see what appeared to be an Orcroft riot. Throngs of those gangly aliens were forming into a mob. Protesters shouted catchy anti-human slogans, while a group ahead of them dressed in all black stormed the doors of the Orcroft Central Bank. Riot police lobbed canisters of tear gas and beat at protesters with batons held in all four arms. The cheeron read, "Orcroft states halt superluminal trading, disconnect Ansibles." "It's all such a chaotic nightmare," Creeder said from outside Hunak's door. Hunak startled slightly to see the intern so suddenly outside his office. He hurriedly dusted off his shell and gestured back towards the vidscreen, which was still playing images of that ghastly scene on Orcroft Prime. "And it's all for what?" Hunak said. "The Orcrofts must realize that until the bond situation in human space calms down, halting interplanetary trading won't fix the problem. They're putting gauze in the split shell." He shook his eye stalks and huffed out through his mandibles. The Orcroft government clearly had no idea how to fix the problem, but then again, neither did his own. "Human messaging on the subject is as inconsistent and confused as ever," Creeder said, while she straightened out rocks on the periphery of Hunak's office floor. She chittered in frustration, and suddenly seemed to snap back to the present. "I am also here to inform you that your request for a meeting with the Interior Minister of the Human Central Bank was declined." Hunak glowered at the predictable rejection, but Creeder was not done talking. "However, I managed to snag you a different meeting for a back channel. The good news is it's with one of their larger private lenders, and they're even paying for the Ansible time. The bad news is that it's scheduled 5 standard minutes from now." Creeder patted her shell apologetically. "I know you haven't been checking your private feeds. I ran here as fast as I could." "Then why are we making small talk about Orcrofts?" Hunak began to say, but he caught the thought in his throat before speaking it. He made the gesture for deep appreciation in one claw, the gesture for "please leave my office" with another. A third claw made an inappropriate gesture behind his shell. A fourth began clearing his floor hurriedly to tidy up as fast as possible. As Creeder left, Hunak cleared rocks from his floor, smoothed the sand under his claws, and dimmed the window to a pleasing hue. He knew humans were not accustomed to his species. One had once remarked to him that offices in Hunak's species looked more like Zen gardens than places of work. Hunak had later looked up a picture of one of those gardens, and he agreed readily enough. They were charming. He had not spoken his thoughts that human offices looked more like morgues. The human who appeared on the vidscreen was identified by AI narration as middle-aged, male, and dressed in formal wear. The AI added discreetly that he was starting to lose his hair. He sat in one of those incredibly uncomfortable-looking human chairs, seated behind a large wooden desk. Hunak rattled his mouth parts to make the human throat-clearing sound. You must be John N. Park from Deutsche Bank? The human smiled. Richard Park, actually. You may have an outdated form, though it is of no concern. And you must be? And truly, the human tried his absolute best, though the sound that left his mouth resembled nothing close to Hunak's full name. Hunak was amused to find the human banker even tried to do the clicks that other species couldn't really ever make properly. Hunak's species could not physically smile, but he relaxed his shoulders. My turn for corrections. You can simply call me Hunak. Thank you for your courtesy. He and the human exchanged formalities a bit longer, and then got into the more technical details. Above all, Hunak hoped this call could finally clear up some of the confusion. But as the conversation began to unroll, Hunak's hopes flagged. The humans had just so many incomprehensible buzzwords. Mr. Parker started with an explanation of humanity's general economic outlook. He panned through slides of the various assorted projections and future outlook indexes for their nations and off-world trading companies. But nothing he was saying lined up. The market fluctuations had strongly implied that the humans possessed economic strength far above what had been projected, but Mr. Park's slides seemed to mostly match those original projections. The markets were treating humanity's economic outlook as vastly better than it seemed to be. Then Mr. Park said something that made Hunak's shell feel brittle. The Human Central Bank released a report today saying that galactic currencies are seriously undervalued given economic expectations. Some have argued it might deliberate currency manipulation, but the HBC believes it is a sign of hyperinflation. Stop, Hunak said. A clear sign of what? The human looked startled. AI narration agreed that he was. Well, any currency is subject to both inflammatory and deflammatory forces. The amount of currency in circulation affects its value. In a situation where a monetary supply is rapidly increased, a currency may become debased and undergo rapid devaluation over time that we term hyperinflation. Hunak nearly choked. The sound brought the human's explanation to a halt. Hunak gathered his thoughts. I don't understand. Why would humanity's sense of their currency's value rise so quickly? What prevents human currency from conforming to its objective standard value under correct conditions? Now it was the human's turn to look puzzled. Conforming to its what? The banker cleared his throat of the processed noises coming from the back of Hunak's throat. Hunak recalled the first paragraph of Economics 101. Any sapient species possesses a sense of objective standard value. This allows accurate pricings of goods and allows a species to agree on a set value for its currency and assets. These values may change based on conditions, but the whole species necessarily agrees on them. It's a basic law of biology, as well as economics. Now the human looked positively shocked. He accidentally launched a pen he had been fidgeting with off his desk. After a false start, he cleared his throat. It's not a matter of current conditions. Human currency is purely fiat. Its value is a reflection of public faith that it has value. That statement might as well have been a plasma torch out of Hunak's beloved economics textbooks. The current central bank is attempting a 9th round of quantitative easing that involves the purchase of government-issued bonds. We are attempting to increase the relative level of inflation to minimize the negative effects of our current market validity on the galactic markets. It has come to our attention only recently that such acts of monetary policy do not exist in other galactic economies. The human straightened his tie, though I personally had not been informed about this concept of objective standard value. Hunak was sure that his shell was now a shade paler. No matter that such a change required many days, he dared to ask the question that had been forming behind his mandibles. The human race has no sense of objective standard value? Correct, the human banker stated bluntly, and because it never occurred to us that such a thing could exist, I suppose we never bothered to ask. We may have done less than what was required to limit the effects of our market speculation on the galaxy. It did not occur to us that our economy would be the only one with the possibility of a limitless rate of growth. If what you've told me is true, compared to your currencies, the potential value of ours is essentially infinite. It will likely require a major reorganization of the economy to put a stop to these fluctuations. The human now also looked pale. While we will all likely come out ahead, it could still take decades for this approaching recession to end, and it hasn't yet been officially declared. Hunak gathered his thoughts. He calmly flexed his legs. He dislodged the mandible in the back of his mouth that he had nearly choked on in shock. The ramifications were enormous. A species that lacked a sense of objective standard value could price its assets at arbitrary amounts. Its currency could wildly fluctuate. Interest rates could be made artificially low or high. Canny human traders who realized galactic economies could not do these things could take advantage of them. Galactics who realized they lacked the ability would overvalue human economic power, which would of course devalue galactic currencies. Objective standard value wasn't fixed. It could drop when a species collectively realized it was being outcompeted, which was already happening. Hunak thought back to the Ukrovs, and then to what Mr. Park had said. Hyperinflation was a realization so simple but so impossible. Hunak shuddered. Their economy was not limited by biology. Humans were not constrained by the most basic economic force in the galaxy. Hunak took many deep breaths. Thank you, Mr. Park. It has been a pleasure, but I'm afraid I must cut this meeting short. I hope you understand. The human banker nodded politely, and the vid call ended. Hunak yelled for a full 5 minutes. A sound like coins being thrown into a frying pan reverberated around his office. What could he do? His species couldn't just abandon their biologically fixed assessment of value. They couldn't compete. Human traders would wreak havoc on galactic markets unopposed. Nothing their central bank did would abate their inherent advantage. Hunak instructed his AI to divest from the market, but knew there was little point. After pacing around his office, he sent his supervisor his resignation. He carefully arranged the rocks in his office and groomed the sandy floors to perfection, like the black sand beaches of his birth. He stepped out of his office and tapped the wall to call the lift. He spoke the command. 30th floor, please.